An 18-year-old goes to an island with a group of friends on the 4th of July. Only one person does not come home, and it's the only black kid in the group. The authorities say drowning, no foul play, almost before his body is even off the beach. His own family says, not so fast. His phone comes back with the messages wiped clean. An independent autopsy finds something on the back of his head that nobody has explained, and now Nancy Grace is on television saying out loud that somebody is lying. That's the Nolan Wells case, and today I'm giving you every receipt that we actually have, and only the ones that we actually have. So let's get into it. What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Indescribable, aka Geraldine Lake, and honestly, I hate covering topics like this. However, I'm aware that I have a large platform, and I decided a long time ago that I would lend my voice whenever I can to issues largely affecting my community. Let me be honest with you about how I'm coming into this one, because it's different from what we usually do here. I'm not here to solve this, okay? I want to say that plainly right at the top. I'm not a detective. I don't have the case files, and this is a real family that is burying a real child right now. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you who did what, because the truth is nobody knows those details yet. What I am going to do is walk you through what has actually been confirmed by name, by source, on the record, because here's what I've learned watching cases like this. The speculation is where families get hurt and where the truth gets buried. The receipts are where the pressure lives, so we're going to stay on the receipts. If it's not confirmed, I'm going to tell you it's not confirmed, okay? First, the person, because he's not just a headline. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He was from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He was a student athlete, a football player, described by everyone who knew him as the kind of kid who lifted other people up. His mother, Christine Wansley, called him a special soul. His father, Elmore Wansley, called him the funniest kid in the family. Here is the confirmed timeline. On July 4th, 2026, Nolan traveled by boat to Horn Island, which is a remote barrier island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. He went with a group of friends. He was either the only black person in that group or close to it. One outlet has reported at least one other black friend was also on the trip. So I'm giving you that too, because we stay accurate over here. Now, at some point that day, the boat reportedly had mechanical problems. The group headed back to shore, and Nolan, according to authorities, stayed behind on the island while the others left. He was reported missing. Local, state, federal, and volunteer teams searched, including the United Cajun Navy. On July 6th, just 2 days later, his body was found off the northwestern tip of the island by a National Park Service ranger. That is the part almost everybody agrees on. Now, here's where it splits. Now, the authorities moved toward one answer very fast. The Jackson County coroner, Bruce Lynn Jr., said there were no immediate obvious signs of foul play or trauma on the body. The Jackson County Sheriff, John Ledbetter, said no foul play had been identified. The working belief from officials has been that Nolan drowned. The family does not accept that. And this is the crucial thing. They don't accept it for very specific reasons, not just grief. Their attorney, the civil rights attorney, Ben Crump, has said flatly that Nolan could swim and that the family is not accepting that he drowned accidentally. The mother said this part that stuck with me the most. She said local authorities told her that they believed he drowned and did not suspect foul play. In her words, not even an hour after his body was removed, and not even an hour before a single autopsy result. That is the seed of this entire dispute right there. So now you have two versions. Officials say accidental drowning, nothing suspicious. The family says a healthy young man who could swim does not just vanish, leave his phone, leave his keys, and stay behind alone. Both sides cannot be equally right about what this was. So let's look at why the family is not backing down. I'm gonna lay these out one at a time. These are the concrete things that have been reported and attributed, not theories, just details. Receipt number one, the phone. Nolan's phone was found on the boat, not with him. His family tracked it and went to retrieve it from his friends. And according to his mother, when she and her sister went through it, the texts and Snapchat messages all appeared to be deleted. She said he had 2 Snapchat accounts, and there was, in her words, absolutely nothing in either of them. Think about that. A teenager's phone with nothing on it? When the last time you saw a teenager with an empty phone? Receipt number 2. Who had the phone? It's not clear which friend the phone was retrieved from or who had possession of it before it got back to the family. That gap matters because a phone is only evidence if you can account for who touched it and when. Receipt number 3, the separation itself. His parents have openly questioned why he separated from the group and why he would not have his phone or his keys on him. That point is simple. That's not normal behavior. It's not been explained. And receipt number 4, the conflicting accounts. This is the big one. There are competing versions of what happened after Nolan was last seen. There's the account from the group of friends, and there is an account tied to another young woman reported by name as Katie, who is said to have seen Wells last. Those two stories don't fit together. And you don't got to take my word for that because this is exactly what pulled Nancy Grace in. Now, receipt number 5 is the data. The family has described a mismatch between the phone data and the location tracking. None of these 5 things by itself proves a crime. I want to be responsible about saying that, but when you stack them up, you understand completely why this family is saying, we're not signing off on accidental, not until somebody explains all 5. Okay, so here's the development that changed the temperature of this whole thing. Nancy Grace, the former prosecutor turned true crime broadcaster, took the case on her show Crime Stories, and the timing was intentional. She aired a full episode roughly 4 hours after Nolan was laid to rest at his funeral on Monday, July 20th. She recapped the case and openly questioned how the Mississippi authorities were handling it. Here's what she actually zeroed in on because I want you to have her real talking points. On the phone data, she said she has a big problem with the Life 360 and the phone data not lining up. Her point was that a small gap she could understand, but the size of the discrepancy the mother is describing, she said she ain't buying that. Okay, on the witness accounts, she went right at the contradiction I mentioned. She said both stories cannot be true, that he cannot have left with the group and also stayed on the island with someone else. And in her words, somebody is lying right there. She called the accounts mutually exclusive. Now, let me give you the fair, honest context on Nancy Grace because we don't do one-sided over here. Grace has a real reputation and it cuts both ways. She's famous for putting relentless national pressure on cases and refusing to let them fall out of the headlines. And a lot of people in marginalized communities have pointed out that she is using a very large platform to keep the spotlight on a case that could have easily been closed and forgotten about. That's the hopeful read, and there is a lot online right now. The other read, and it's also true, is that she has been criticized before for pushing too hard on a narrative early and that intense media attention is not the same thing as evidence. Both of those can be true at once. Her being loud about it does not make the family right. It makes the case harder to ignore. Those are different things, and I want you to understand both of them. Now, this is the real part that I think is the actual heart of the story, so stay with me because I'm going to try to keep it simple, okay? There are 2 separate autopsies in this case. The first is the official one, done by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office on July 7th. As of right now, those results have not been released because they are waiting on toxicology. Real quick, in plain terms, toxicology is the lab work that checks the body for things like alcohol or drugs, and it genuinely does take weeks in most death investigations. So the official cause of death is not public yet. Nobody's hiding that one on the shelf. It's just a normal wait time. The second autopsy is the independent one. The family was so uneasy that they sent Nolan's body out of state to Washington, D.C., where Colin Kaepernick paid for their own private autopsy performed by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger A. Mitchell, Jr. And here is what that preliminary report said. It listed the cause and manner of death as undetermined, pending investigation. Let me translate that, okay? Undetermined does not mean drowning. It does not mean murder. It means the doctor looked and said, I can't tell you for certain what this was yet. Dr. Mitchell also wrote that there were several limitations that made it harder to reach a definitive answer, which is an honest thing for a pathologist to admit. But the independent autopsy found one thing that has not gone away. It found an area of red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head. Some outlets have described that as a significant injury to the back of the head, and this is the key part. The report did not draw a conclusion about how it got there. It didn't say someone caused it, it just documented that it was there. Now, line that up. The coroner said early on there were no obvious signs of trauma. The independent autopsy documents a finding on the back of the head that nobody has explained. That's the discrepancy. That's the whole ball game right there. And the responsible way to say it is this. There's a finding on his head, and the public does not have an official explanation for it. That's not me saying what happened. That is me telling you exactly what is unresolved. The racial backdrop of this case is not something people invented online. It's the part of coverage in every major outlet. Nolan was a young black man who died after a trip with a mostly white group of friends in Mississippi, a state whose racial history hangs over a case like this, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. That's why the story went national. The family has been very precise about what they are asking for. They are not standing up there yelling that race got their son killed. What Christine Wansley said is that they want the same respect and the same thorough investigation that would be given to anybody else. That's a request for equal treatment, not an accusation. And I have to give you the other side because it exists and it's on the record. Some public officials and some of Nolan's own friends have pushed back on race being treated as a factor. And at the funeral, Reverend Al Sharpton himself said in his eulogy that all white people are not racist and all black people are not angry. And one former detective, a man with nearly 30 years in law enforcement, put it in a way that I thought was the fairest thing anybody has said about it. He said there is no evidence that he can see that race played a role, but there is also no evidence that race did not play a role, and that shutting the door early in either direction is exactly where investigations go wrong. So where does that leave us, honestly? It leaves us here. Race is why the country is watching. Whether race is a part of what happened to Nolan is not established in either direction. And anybody who tells you that it's settled either way is getting ahead of the evidence. The family is simply asking for a real investigation. That request stands on its own no matter what the answer turns out to be. So is there a psychological angle here? I want to be honest because the honest answer is not the flashy one. There's no villain to profile because no cause of death and no suspect has been established. So I'm not going to sit here and build a fake psychology of a person who has not been named. Okay, that would be exactly the speculation I promised you that I would not do. But there is a real psychological weight to this case, and it is worth naming. Psychologists have a term, ambiguous loss, for the specific kind of grief where you lose someone, but you don't get closure. You don't get the answer. The question just stays open. That's what this family is living inside of right now. They're burying their son without knowing why he's gone. That's a particular kind of pain, and it's why they can't just let this go and grieve quietly. The open question is the wound. And there's a second layer, which is how this family has been treated in public. There has been documented online hostility aimed at Nolan's own mother while she's grieving, and there has been reporting on what some have called a double burden. Black families who grieve in the national spotlight often have to prove their pain is legitimate while they're experiencing it. Think about that. Fighting for people to take your dead child seriously in public on the same day you picking out a casket. That's the psychological story here, not a profile of a stranger, the toll on the people who are actually still here. Let me give you the realistic road ahead so you know what to actually watch for instead of just chasing down rumors. 1, the official autopsy and toxicology. The state's results are still pending. When toxicology comes back, we should finally get an official cause and manner of death from the medical examiner. That is the single most important document still outstanding, so watch out for that. Number 2, the grand jury. The Jackson County District Attorney, Angel Myers McElrath, has said that once the investigation is complete, she will present the findings to a grand jury. In plain English, a grand jury is a group of citizens who look at the evidence and decide whether there is enough to charge anyone. The DA has been clear that convening a grand jury is standard procedure for deaths that are not natural and does not by itself mean that they think a crime happened. So don't let anybody tell you that a grand jury means an arrest is on the way. It means that the evidence gets a formal review. That is the correct thing for it to mean. Number 3, the family's expert Ben Crump has said he wants the family's own pathologist, Dr. Mitchell, to be allowed to be present before that grand jury too, so that the independent findings, including that head discoloration, actually get heard and not buried. So let's watch and see whether the DA agrees to that. That's a real fight worth tracking. Number 4, the digital evidence. The FBI is helping examine the digital evidence, and the sheriff's office has been asking the public for any videos, photos, or firsthand accounts from people who were on that island on that day. So if this case cracks, there's a real chance that it's going to crack on those phones and on the timeline, not on that body. So here's where I'm going to leave it, and it's exactly where the family left it. There's a lot of noise around this case, and there are rewards now, over $100,000 of them, okay, from Reverend Al Sharpton to Tyler Perry to Terrell Owens. There are celebrities, there are marches, there's Nancy Grace, there's a whole country arguing, and in the middle of all of that, Nolan's mother said the thing that cuts through everything. She said there are so many people out there asking all of these questions, but the only question we have is, What happened to our son? That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything else is secondary to that one question. So I'm going to keep watching this with you, and I'm going to keep it to the receipts. And the second there's a confirmed answer, real confirmation and not just a rumor, I'm going to bring it straight to you. So let's keep the pressure respectful and keep that family in your heart, because they are the ones who still have to live in the middle of this. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know every time I post an update, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.